This begins CD number 9.
I want to look at some verses here in Surah Al-Hadid when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ وَلَا يَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِن قَبْلُ فَطَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَدُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. This verse begins, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ, and it's a rhetorical question in which we're being asked, has not the time arrived for those who believe that their hearts should be humbled? لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ. Their heart should be humbled into remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ, and what has come from the truth, which is the Quran. And they should not be like the people who went before them, who were given the books before them, where their hearts became hard. And many of them are fasiqun, people that fasaqa an amri rabbi, that they go outside of the directives of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This, according to the Sahaba, this was revealed when they migrated to Medina. And they started becoming successful again, and things were going well, and what they were being reminded of was the state that they were in, and all that difficulty in Mecca was a state that actually brought them very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And now that they're in Medina and it's much easier for them, they're forgetting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now this was said to the Sahaba, and it was said only 13 years after this revelation began. So the point is that it's very easy to become complacent. It's very easy to go back to sleep. It's very easy to forget what this is about. And that's one of the beauties of tribulation, is that I guarantee you, all of you know this state, is that when you go into tribulation, who do you want to call on? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, that's the human nature. So the best thing to do is that when you're in a good state is to be connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that it doesn't have to take that difficulty to bring you back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, the idea that Iman doesn't fluctuate with the stock market. There's a lot of people whose Iman is up when the stock market is up, you know, and then it goes down when it's down, and vice versa. Vice versa. In other words, when the stock market's up, they forget Allah. And then when it goes down, they remember Allah. So it goes both ways. You can be donating when everything's going well, but then when things start going difficult and you get afraid. And this verse is setting up for a very powerful statement about this, just to remind you as it comes later. And then it says that you should not be like the people of the book, meaning the Jews and the Christians, who time passed, طَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَدُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُم, and because of the passage of time, their hearts became hard. In other words, they were given the truth, and then they forgot the truth. Their hearts became hard. And then, وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. The nature of a hard heart is that you go into fisq. You go into doing things that you should not do. That's what happens when the heart becomes hard, is you actually do things that you would not do in normal circumstances when the heart is sound. And this is the beauty of, whenever Allah, if you look throughout the Quran, whenever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us about these things, there's always the hope. اعلموا أن الله يحيي الأرض بعد موتها. Know that Allah brings the earth back to life after it's died. In other words, that even though your heart has died, it can be brought back to life. So don't despair. Don't despair that you've gone into this state, because just like you look at the hills around you that were dead and barren, and now they're brought back to life, that's the nature of the world. The world is this movement, يُخْرِجُ الْحَيَّ مِنَ الْمَيِّتِ وَيُخْرِجُ الْمَيِّتِ مِنَ الْحَيِّ وَيَحْيِي الْأَرْضَ بَعْدَ مَوْتِهَا. He brings the life from the dead, and He brings the dead from the living, and He brings the earth back to life. So the heart is like that. It's moving between being awake and being asleep, between a living heart and a dead heart. If you're remembering Allah, the heart is alive. If you stop remembering Allah, the heart dies. In the same way that if you cut off oxygen from the heart dies. The cells of the heart die. And the oxygen of the spiritual heart is dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you stop remembering Allah, the spiritual heart dies also. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قَدْ بَيَّنَّا لَكُمْ الْآيَاتِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَعْقِلُونَ. We are making clear these signs in order that you can understand them. And this is the thing about the Quran, is that the Quran is telling you to think deeply about things. That the reason we're saying things like we bring the earth back to life is so that you can think, well, what does that mean in relation to me? If I'm earth, what does that mean? Because I am earth. We were created min sulalatin min teen. We were created from the earth. So if Allah brings that earth back to life after it was dead, then He can bring this earth back to life after it was dead. Now, how do you do that? What's the sign? How do you know that your iman is healthy? Inna al-musaddiqina wal-musaddiqat. Those who give charity from men and from women. Because of sadaqatu burhan, charity is proof of your iman. Now, charity is not just money. Inna Allah ashtara min al-mu'minin anfusum wa amwalahum. He bought their lives and their souls. Service is charity. Ibtisama, smiling in the face of your brother or sister, is charity. These are all charitable acts. So the sign that your iman is strong is that you're serving others. And that's why sadaqah, which means to speak the truth. Sadaqah means he spoke the truth. Sadiq is a truthful one. So the musaddiq, the one who's giving charity, is also the one who's believing, because that's also what musaddiq means. See, Allah says, Inna al-musaddiqina wal-musaddiqat. Right? Those who give charity. But what does musaddiq also mean? The believers. Those who have believed, because وَفُسِّرَ الْإِيمَانُ بِالتَّصْدِيقِ. Iman, according to the people of Sunnah and Jama'ah, is tasdeeq. And that is why charity is iman. So if you are charitable, then you're a believer. And if you're bakhil, and that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, when a man said to him, who's your Sayyid? They said, Fulan illa nastabkhiluhu. We consider him a miser. He said, وَهَلْ هُنَكَ دَاءٌ أَدْوَى مِنَ الْبُخْلِ. Is there some disease worse than miserliness? In other words, that is an indication that the heart is really sick, that you're holding on, that you can't let go. It's a disease in the heart. Think of miserliness in terms of being angry at somebody. That's a bakhil. In other words, if you're holding a grudge, you're not letting go of something. So that in itself is a type of miserliness. It's not a charitable act to hold a grudge. To give the sadaqah of your pardon, the charity of forgiving somebody, it's a charitable act to forgive somebody. And that's in Latin, caritas, which is charity, means love. Because that's also where charity is coming from. It's coming from mahabba. It's coming from mahabba. So, for those who give in charity, men and women, وَأَقْرَضُ اللَّهَ قَرْضًا حَسَنًا, and they give to Allah a good loan. Now this is the beauty of also the relationship that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed the believer in. It's a relationship of parity. And this is something extraordinary, because when you go into a transaction with somebody, a business transaction, there's a parity. In other words, there's a type of equality between the buyer and the seller. I mean, you can exploit these relationships, but the basic relationship between a buyer and a seller is one of give and take. And what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here is that He is giving us the opportunity to loan Him a goodly loan. That is out of honor. That is not out of necessity. If I need a loan and I go to you, please loan me money, that's a loan of weakness, of necessity, and I'm in an inferior position. But if I want to honor somebody and I want to make them feel as if they're doing me a favor, I can allow them to do something that I know that I don't need it done, but I want them to feel, and people do this with their children sometimes. They'll let them do something simply to make them feel like Ibrahim when he asked Ismail or Ishaq. I mean, the dominant opinion amongst many of the ulama is Ishaq, and it's a very strange thing that the Muslims have become so entrenched in that position, whether it was Ismail or Ishaq. Because that hadith, Ana ibnu dhabihain, I'm the son of two sacrifices, doesn't have strength. So either one, I don't mind. I mean, whatever Allah did on that day, that's fine with me. I mean, the ulama differed about it, and that's why you shouldn't make it a point of contention with Jews or Christians, because it's just it's a foolish point of contention. It's not what the story's about, who it was. It's about what happened on that day. But when he said, Fandor, look, think about this. Because he said, I saw in my dream, أَنِّي أَذْبَحُكَ, that I kill you. فَانْظُرْ مَاذَا تَرَى. So look and tell me what you think about this. And that was a way of honoring his son. He didn't have to ask him. It was a way of honoring his son. And that's what Allah is doing here when He's giving us this chance to loan a loan, not to Him, but to His deen. To do good deeds, to do these things. يُضَاعَفُ لَهُمْ وَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ. He will increase them in that loan. In other words, that loan is multiplied. And the metaphor for that in the world is interest, which is interesting why Allah has prohibited interest. Because it's as if He is the only one that can do that with loans. That's Allah's, nobody else can do that. Make something out of nothing, because that's what interest is. It's making something out of nothing. Right? And that's what it is, if you think about it. Because I'm giving you $10, and I'm making from that $10, by the mere fact I'm loaning it to you, $20 or $30. So I've made something out of nothing. I mean, that's the game of usury. So we're being told that Allah increases it, وَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ, and they have a liberal reward, this generous reward. And this is where the karam, لَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي آدَمَ, we have honored the children of Adam. This is part of the takreem, and that's why it's ajrun kareem. It's a generous, liberal reward, because Allah's doing out of His generosity. He's not doing it, it's not a fitting reward. Do you see, there's nothing fitting, there's no real parity here. Nothing is equal to Allah. But it's a generous reward because Allah is doing it purely out of this karam, which He's dhul jalali wal ikram. It's part of the nature of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to do that. And then, وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصِّدِّقُونَ. Now look, see the Siddiq. This is those who believe in Allah and His messengers. They are the Siddiqun. So now this is a maqam. The Musaddiqun and the Musaddiqats is a maqam. If you do that as a practice, what happens? You enter into the maqam of the Siddiqiyya, which is the highest maqam after prophecy. So in other words, through this process of being charitable, of desiring to draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, through these means that Allah has afforded us out of His generosity, you enter into this station of Siddiqiyya. Now the Siddiqun, the first Siddiq of this ummah is Abu Bakr, which is why he's given the title. He is the Imam of the Siddiqeen, just as the Prophet is Imam al-Anbiya wal-Mursaleen. I mean, the Prophet is Imam al-Siddiqeen because he's Abu Bakr's Imam, but it's under that. It's like a sub-rubric. The Siddiqiyya is the maqam of Abu Bakr, because the Prophet's maqam encompasses all other maqams. He has all of the maqams, just like he has all of the prophets. What they were given as individual prophets, he encompasses. So he has the Musan nature, he has the Isawi nature, he has all of that as part of the Prophet's maqam, is that he encompasses all of these different stations of prophecy. And that's why when he said, don't prefer me over Yunus ibn Metta, Because Yunus had his Isra in the depths of the ocean, and the Prophet had his Isra in the heights of the heavens. He was saying Allah's not closer up there than He is down there. So don't think there's any difference just because his Isra was in the depths of the ocean, or mine was in the heights of the celestial sphere. With Allah, knowledge is one thing. Ma'rifah is one thing. Knowledge of Allah is one thing. What differs is how much you get. So containers can differ, but the actual ma'rifah itself is the same. It's just like water. You see, this cup has less water than this vase here. But the water is the same. It's just there's a bigger container. And that's the way the prophets are. Their knowledge is the same. What they've been given from Allah is the same, but you have different containers. So the maqam of Siddiqiyya, if you look at it was also in the maqam of Khadija, was Siddiqa in her maqam. And also Maryam alayha salam is called Siddiqa. Right? She was a Siddiqa. And Yusuf alayhi salam is called Siddiq as well. So it's a high attribute in Islam. And then وَالشُّهَدَاء عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ. Now, see, the beauty of this is وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَرُسُلِهِ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الصِّدِّقُونَ وَالشُّهَدَاء. I mean, this is fadl. This verse is, Allah is He's just giving out. It's all fadl. يُضَعْفُ لَهُمْ وَلَهُمْ أَجْرٌ كَرِيمٌ. This is all just, here it is. You can be a Siddiq. You could even be Shaheed. It's all there. He's just giving it away in that verse. You don't have to die on a battlefield to be Shaheed. That's what that verse is saying. You don't have to be Abu Bakr to be a Siddiq. This is the fadl of Allah. And don't limit the bounty of Allah. Don't be like these fools that want to say, Yadullah maghlula, Allah's hands are tied, He can't give to whomever. He can give to whomever He pleases, and you don't have any say. And that's why when Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu said, Ya Rasulullah, awal mu'min yazni? Can a mu'min commit fornication? Can he be forgiven? And the Prophet ﷺ said yes. And Abu Dharr kept saying, wait, because Abu Dharr, this is the furthest thing that's possible for him. I mean, Abu Dharr his maqam is such, he cannot imagine a believer. How can a believer do a major wrong action like that? And the Prophet ﷺ said, yeah, he can do that. And Abu Dharr said, can he steal? And he said, yes, he can steal. He can't believe it. So what he keeps saying it, what does the Prophet ﷺ say? Raghima, despite the nose of Abu Dharr, in spite of his nose. In other words, in spite of your own desire or your own belief, this is true. That Allah can forgive a fornicator, He can forgive a thief, He can forgive, no matter what your maqam is and how difficult that is for you to imagine a believer doing those things, what you're told there is Allah can forgive it. And He will if He pleases. And that's why Abu Dharr radiallahu anhu said that they go into paradise, because he relates the hadith, and then he says, Raghma anfi Abi Dharr, in spite of me, in spite of me. Now the shaheed, there are 3 levels of shaheed. The first one is whoever dies on the battlefield. That's a shaheed. Who dies in the way of Allah, not fighting for the wrong reasons, fighting for the right reason. And that person has no hisab. They're not washed, you just bury them. Because that's their maqam. It's like they have given so much. There's nothing you can add or detract to that maqam by washing them, or that it's more than anything that you can do. And then the second type of shaheed is the one who dies from a tribulation. So the Prophet ﷺ said, anyone who dies drowning, if you die in a fire, if you die in a building falling on you, like in an earthquake, those are all shuhada, those people that died in Turkey and places like that, if the building falls on you. Any of the muwahidun that were in that building on September 11th, those people have martyrdom. So, and then also mabtun, the person who dies from dysentery. and also the person who dies in a plague. Those are all shuhada. A person who dies, man mata duna madihi, mata shahida. If you die protecting your property from a thief, you die a shaheed. That's all. And then the third category is this one. If you die believing that Allah is one, that you're a shaheed. And that's why Khalid ibn Walid died a shaheed in his bed. He wanted martyrdom, but Allah didn't give it to him on the battlefield. He gave it to him on his bed, and one of the ulama said that he did not get martyrdom because he was the safe of Allah, and Allah's sword would never fall on a battlefield. Now, لَهُمْ أَجْرُهُمْ وَنُورُهُمْ. See, they have their reward, and then they have their light. Not just reward. The reward is for what they were doing. The light is from the bounty of Allah. So there's two things you're gaining. You're gaining what you've earned. لَهَا مَا كَسَبَتْ. The soul has whatever it earned. And then you're gaining what you don't deserve or you haven't earned. It's from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. يُؤْتِي نُورُهُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. He gives His light to whomever He pleases. So you not only have the ajr, the reward from Allah, you have the light from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا. And those who cover up the truth and deny the signs. And this is important because you have to recognize kufr is kufr wa takdhib. See, there's a denial. It's the opposite of tasdeeq. And that is why a person who hasn't been given the opportunity to deny or to believe does not go under that category. They have the hukm of kafir because it relates to inheritance laws and things like that. But in terms of being somebody for the hellfire, that's not the case. The hellfire is reserved, according to the Quran, to those who deny. And that is why even the idolater, according to the Muslims, is not destined for the hellfire if he has not been given the truth. And that's the dominant belief of the Sunni Muslims. And the other belief is a minority belief. And رغم أنوفهم, in spite of themselves. Right? Because there's people that don't want to because Allah says that He will not forgive idolatry. But that has to do with people who know. I mean, you need to take the Quran all together. And that's why Allah says, وَلَا تَجْعَلُوا لِلَّهِ أَنْدَادًا وَأَنْتُمْ تَعْلَمُونَ. Don't set up idols beside Allah and you're aware of what you're doing. It's called a jumla haliyah. That's your state, is that you actually know what you're doing. But somebody who was born in a place and their parents told them this idol's your God and nobody ever goes and tells them otherwise, how can you condemn that person? Because you can't work this thing out on your own. There's too many variables in the intellect working, and even in reality. If you really want to take it to another level, you can't condemn anybody to the hellfire because you don't know all the variables. You don't know what's going on. You don't know what happened when they were children. Only Allah knows the whole story. And that's why you can look outwardly and say, by all outward appearances, it would seem to be the case, but in the akhirah, you could be in for a big surprise. Because only Allah has all of that information. All of that knowledge. And that's why Muslims never have condemned in the history of Islam any individuals by their names, other than those that were mentioned in the Quran, like Fir'aun, Abu Lahab, that's it, or mentioned in Hadith. That's it. And the Prophet, that hadith, Abi wa abuka fin nar, my father and your father is in the fire. It's in the Sahih, but the ulama said it doesn't mean Abdullah, it meant Abu Lahab, because the Arabs say my uncle for my father. And so Abu Talib, when Bahira asked them who his father was, Abu Talib said, Ana Abi, I am his father, Ana Abuhu, I am his father. And Bahira said, La yumkin an yakun lahu ab hayy. It's not possible that he has a living father. And he said, Ana ammuhu, I'm his uncle. But when he said, Ana abuhu, Abu Talib didn't lie. In the Arabic language, you can call your uncle your father. And that's this, Ibrahim alayhi salam, Azar was his uncle, it wasn't his father. When he said, Ya abati. So, when the Prophet said, my father is in the fire, he wasn't talking about Abdullah radiallahu anhu. He was talking about Abu Lahab, because that's in the Quran. And that's not an abrogated verse. He never became Muslim. So those who disbelieve and deny our signs, وَكَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِنَا أُولَٰئِكَ أَصْحَابُ الْجَحِيمِ, these are the companions of the fire. And the reason that the word companion is used is because companion is the one that's who you hang out with. It's who you spend your time with. So they're spending their time with Nar Jahannam or Jahim. Now, the reason that this follows, these incredible verses of giving, is these verses of reminding, is because don't become deluded. And then what follows it immediately after? اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب ولهو. Don't get deluded by the world, because that is what's going to get you in trouble in the akhirah. And once you've understood that the akhirah is a serious matter, don't become deluded by the world. Know that the life of this world is la'ib. What is la'ib? Ta'ab bila fa'ida. That's what the Arabs say. It's expending energy without any benefit. It's like playing a game of Monopoly or something like that. I mean, that's la'ib. You're expending energy and you're not deriving any benefit from it. And so the life of this world is la'ib. Why? Because even if you built the tallest buildings, even if you amassed the greatest wealth, you die. So what have you built it for? What did you build all that for? I mean, if you're John D. Rockefeller and you built Standard Oil into the massive empire that it became, what was it done for? Because he's dead now. He's not there. Somebody else is benefiting from it. He's not benefiting. So he exhausted all that energy without any real benefit, because what's past is past. You see, you can say, I ate a meal last week, but I haven't had one since. That meal that you ate is not benefiting you now. You're hungry. So what's past, that benefit was a temporary benefit. So in reality, there's nothing continuous about that benefit. And that's the nature of the world. If you look at the world in real terms, given the fact that we're all mortal and we're all going to die, the benefit of the world is what? What is it in reality? It's nothing. It's la'ib. It's just a game. That's all it is. It's exerting energy without any real benefit. You see, you can exert energy and get physical, like people that exercise. Well, I guarantee you stop exercising. You can exercise for all your life, and then you stop, and within a few months, all of that effort that you put in all those years, it's gone. Really. So if it's not ongoing, it's not really of any true benefit. It's only benefiting you temporarily. So the point here is, what will benefit you in reality? This is the question. اعلموا أنما الحياة الدنيا لعب. Know that the life of this world is play. وَلَهْوٌ. What is lahu? Lahu is those things that you use to preoccupy yourself from more important concerns. That's lahu in the Arabic language. Lahu is what you do to kill time. You've got important things to do, but you do things that make you forget those important things. And this is why people that go on vacation, why do they go on vacation? Because they need some lahu from the important concern. They need to forget. So there's a reason why Allah gave us lahu. I mean, it does serve a function. But if you make your whole life lahu, in other words, the Prophet ﷺ, he asked when the Ansar were having a wedding, he said, do they have any lahu? Is there any entertainment? فَإِنَّ الْأَنصَارَ يُعْجِبُهُمُ اللَّهُ, because they like to be entertained, the Ansar. And another time he said, did you bring some entertainment? And he said, I want to show the Jews and the Christians that we have some room in our religion for entertainment. In other words, we're not always preoccupied with these things, because if you do that, the Prophet ﷺ said, he talked about the munbit, the one that continually works and never takes recreation. And then he said, لا ظهرا أبقى ولا أرضا قطعا. He will not have a back to hold him up. After a while, he'll get so burnt out that he can't continue on what he was doing. And he will not get to the land that he's trying to get to. ولا أرضا قطعا. You see, in other words, if you beat your camel without stopping to give it rest, that's what he was talking about in the hadith. When you're traveling, if you just keep beating that camel, trying to get to your destination, you're gonna eventually destroy the camel. And then you're stuck in the middle of the desert, right, with looking at this animal that you took it to that state because you didn't stop to give it water, to let it graze, to recreate. I mean, recreate's a beautiful word in English, to recreate, right? To renew. So we need renewal. But if you make the world a recreation, right? If you just turn it into this pastime where what you're using it for is to preoccupy you about questions of ultimate concern, which I talked about last week. Right? Those are the questions of ultimate concern. Where did you come from? Where are you going? Who are you? What's your purpose? What happens after you die? These are the questions that you should not be using the world to preoccupy you from being concerned about. Because if you do, you're going to have very big awakening, a rude awakening. Wazinatun. And it's zina. Now what is zina? Zina are things that when you see them, they please the eye. Now, the amazing thing about life is, if you see a beautiful car, there's people look. That's why a lot of people have beautiful cars. Because they like, why do they put that armor all on the tires? Right? Why do they do that? They're in the car. They can't see the tires. Why are they doing that? Because they want that zina. They want other people's eyes to look at it. That's the real goal, is look at me. Now, if that becomes your life, and for many people it is, there's nothing wrong with having nice things. If you can afford them, and if gaining those nice things does not prevent you from fulfilling your other obligations. Because Allah has a world in which He made some people wealthy, some people poor, and He likes to see athar ni'mati ala abdi. He likes to see traces of those blessings on His servant. But the Muslims had a very interesting phenomenon. If you go into a Muslim city, a traditional city, the Muslims never made their houses beautiful on the outside. Never. Why didn't they do that? Because they did not want people to look with envy. They saved it for the inside. So if you go into a house in Morocco, outside it looks like this old, about to fall apart. And then you go inside and it's this incredible palace. And the reason they did that is because, first of all, the people that they invite to their house are their friends. That's who you invite into your house, people that you know, and generally those people are not envious of you. Those are people that care about you. And that's why when you go into a house, you're supposed to say, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah. And that's what Imam Malik had on his door. He put it on his door to remind people to say that when they came in, because Imam Malik was amazing. And he didn't want people to go in and say, Imam Malik's amazing, without having said, MashaAllah, la quwwata illa billah, right? As a protection, because you can harm people in ways that you don't even know. So the zina it's in malbas, it's in markab, right? It's al-mal wal-banuna zinatul hayat ad-dunya. Wealth and children are the zina. Because if somebody sees your children, you've got beautiful children, mashallah. Yasurra al-nadirin, it's something that the eye is pleased to see. It's the bounty of Allah. So in protecting yourself from those, there are things that you do. One is don't become extravagant. Don't make other people become envious of it. And one of the things that this country around the world is, because it puts the outward is so emphasized, the world does look on it with a lot of envy. I mean, there is a lot of envy. And envy, the interesting thing about envy is that quality of the heart that no one will admit. A person will admit a felonious crime before they'll admit to being envious. You'll never find anybody admit to, I'm actually envious of that person. That's why I dislike them so much. So envy is actually a type of flattery. And that's why the Prophet ﷺ said, "Kullu di ni'matin mahsud." Everyone who has a blessing will have somebody who envies him for that blessing. And in one dua, Sayyidina Ali, "Kathar Allah min husadik." May Allah increase your enviers. And what it meant was, may Allah increase your blessings. So envy is a very strange phenomenon, and it's related to this zina. People envy what they see. And that's why in English, envy comes from invidio, which is a bad look. Right? It's to look. They call it mal ojo, mal ojo, the evil eye. It's looking with a bad eye. It's looking at somebody. And it's related to the word hassasa. Hasada has a relationship to the word of sensing or seeing. Zinatun wa tafakhurun bainakum. Now, the thing about zina is you begin, once you get into that stage of life where you try to have these things, then it becomes tafakhur. Right? You're going to have this mutual boasting. Alhaakumut takathuru. Accumulating wealth has you, alhaakumu, it's lahu, preoccupied you, hatta zurtumul maqabir, until you visit your graves. Right? In other words, you get so caught up in this dunya, you forget where you're really going, which is your grave. And this mutual trying to get all this stuff can become a very dangerous preoccupation. Tafakhurun bainakum, wa takathurun fil amwali wal awlad. And then you vie with one another, having more children, more wealth. Right? And this becomes this sickness. Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu said to Ammar, he said, "La tahsan ala dunya ya Ammar." Don't get depressed about this world. There's so many verses in the Quran, don't get depressed. And that's why Muslims should take to heart that depression is not a quality that a believer should accept. The Quran should free you from depression. And the Prophet asked that it be dhahabu hammi wa ghammi, wa huzni, wa jira'u huzni, the remover of my depression, right? That you shouldn't get depressed. I mean, there's people that get depressed, but it's really, depression, I think, at the root of a lot of depression is self-indulgence, because people aren't serving. If you're actually out serving people, it will actually free you of those feelings of depression. The best Prozac is to go out and just feed people, go work with Rahima or something like that. Right? Seriously, go and feed people. Don't be so self-indulgent. Because a lot of depression, I mean, there are, and I accept this, that there are some imbalances that people have, and depression can get into a cycle because there are chemical imbalances. But I think before you go that route, you should definitely try other means, because people can be clinically depressed where you have these deep endogenous types of depression, and there can be exogenous depression. I mean, some people really do have very difficult lives outwardly. Allah gives them great tribulation, and that can cause a depression, and it becomes a little bit for somebody to say, come on, snap out of it. It's difficult because it's difficult to appreciate people's states like that. So, but generally there's a lot of people that don't really have those type of reasons, and they get into that self-indulgent state, which is very unhealthy.
This completes CD number 9.